And we are back, and we just finished watching 2023's BEAU is Afraid, rated R, with a runtime of 2 hours and 59 minutes. This is from one of our favorites, Ari Aster, written and directed by Ari Aster. According to IMDb, this is tagged as comedy, drama, horror, and the little blurb says, following the sudden death of his mother, a mild-mannered but anxious-ridden man confronts his darkest fears as he embarks on an epic Kafka-esque odyssey back home. I mean, I guess that's the bare bones of it, but there is a lot to talk about in this film. It didn't do well at the box office, which is a kind of a shame, because while I don't love this the way I love Midsommar and Hereditary, this movie was really, really interesting, and it was a commitment. It's a 3-hour film.
Yeah.
And there are parts, and listen, as much as I love Ari Aster and I think the world of him, there are parts that dragged. There were parts where I was like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah. Oh my. Oh, parts.
There were parts where I was like laughing, and there was parts where I felt very, very, very melancholy. So this movie was quite the journey for me. I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
No, I agree with you on all of that. I could also see why it didn't do well, because it's 3 hours long, and it is not it's not like Midsommar or Hereditary, where you have a basic story going through that leads to a conclusion.
Right. There was a lot going on in this
There's
film.
a lot going on, and unless you really want to like dig into it and tear it apart, and it's not something that you could simply do that with.
Right.
It's
all over the place.
It's all over the place. It's kind of a mess. Like you said, I would say, yeah, there are parts of it that kind of drag, that you're confused as to what's going on. There's like 4 settings in the movie. There's like his home. Mm-hmm. Then you move to the couple's house, the home of the couple. Then there's the forest group. Then there's mom's house. And each of those things, they spend significant time on each of those things. Yeah. And the craziness just ramps up all along the way. You are seeing a world that is not this world.
Yeah.
It is insane. It is from the beginning to the end, there is nothing sane about what you are seeing in this world.
Yeah. I also want to caveat this review by saying that we actually saw this last night, but I felt like you and I needed to take a break from this film and really just sort of digest it, because I feel like it's one of those things. It's like I think it's something that you have to sit with and really, really think about, because in that moment, I could have just turned on this microphone and said, you know what, I kind of hated that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a disservice to the film and the story, because I think at the crust of it, when you could sit back and really think about it and sort of like apply it kind of even to your own life. I think after we were done watching it, the kids didn't watch the whole thing with us, but they came in and out of different parts of it. And I think as soon as it was done, I turned to you and I'm like, what the hell was that?
Yeah. No. Yeah, I 100% agree. If my initial reaction was just like, I don't know if I really like this thing or what, but if you really examine it and you sort of like, you try and find a logic to it. And in that, I found myself becoming more engaged and enjoying it, trying to figure out the logic behind it. And I have my own theory that would explain everything in the movie. And I think that's why I've seen films where it's just a mess.
Right, it's a fever dream.
Just a fever dream, random stuff is going on. But the problem I think in those films is that there's always some sort of flaw that breaks the logic. Mm-hmm. I could think of something about this movie where it kind of makes sense throughout the entire thing now. And as such, it's just an interesting premise that, I mean, I don't know if I'm right or wrong. That's one of the joys of watching movies like this, is you interpret things in your own way.
Absolutely.
But if I'm right, then I could say that, yeah, this was a decent movie. It's not my favorite Ari Aster movie.
No.
But in my mind, it makes the theory that I have makes sense, and it also makes sense in the concept of, I guess, like a superficial way. Hey, wouldn't it be hilarious if Ari Aster made a comedy? This is what you would get. This is what you would get. This is no joke. This is what you would get if you thought, oh, Ari Aster, that creepy guy from Hereditary and Midsommar.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what he would find hilarious.
Yeah. This is as close to Three Stooges you're going to get from Ari Aster. I think another interesting thing was once we were done watching the film, I think G went on Google, and I can't remember. I'm obviously going to paraphrase this, but it was like schizophrenia with bits of panic attack. And I think that is a really, really good way of describing this film.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, that's what we're watching. We're watching the world seen through the eyes of a man who is suffering from like severe schizophrenia. He's, like I said, there's no way that this world exists.
The way it does. Or
the way
he's viewing it.
Because if this is sort of like, imagine like the world of RoboCop, but like on crack, you know? And that was just one city. This is like the world. The world can't function if this is the world. Mm-hmm. But this world that we're seeing, you could clearly believe that based upon what you see in like because let's be honest, news and Twitter and all the stuff that we have today.
Clouds, reality.
The stuff that's going to get your attention is the sensational, crazy, psychotic stuff. According to like the right, the cities are burning.
Right.
According to the left, there's Nazis everywhere. Mm. The conspiracy theories about they're pumping drugs everywhere and
5G is controlling your
5G is giving you cancer or COVID or COVID was an excuse to put microchips in your body. All of this stuff. Now imagine, I mean, we see this stuff, and I mean, growing up, this stuff was around too, and
but it wasn't.
We laughed at it because if you wanted to really hear the conspiracy stuff, you'd wait till like 3 or 4 in the morning and listen to Art Bell. Now it's 24/7. Everybody's got like a slick presentation. They got green screens.
Yeah,
and there's no verification.
Yeah, a couple $100 you can get a sound thing and have your own podcast.
And honestly, you don't even need that. You just need somebody saying something and then somebody repeating it, and eventually it confirms itself. And next thing you know,
it's truth.
It's the truth.
Yeah. JFK was coming back.
JFK is going to be Trump's vice president, or Biden is a clone, or
oh my God, I don't even start.
Hillary Clinton eats babies, and with her and Tom Hanks just chowing down on babies.
Yeah.
Although stuff was talking about, but now imagine that being viewed not by a sane person, but somebody who is just deeply disturbed, suffering from schizophrenia. People who suffer from schizophrenia have hallucinations. They're seeing stuff that's not there. They're interpreting things way differently than we would interpret them. So if you live in a world where you're walking down the street and some homeless guy asks you for change, suddenly you're in this freaking hellscape where there's dead bodies lying on the ground for days at a time. There's just crazy homeless people everywhere chasing you, threatening to kill you.
Right. And you're in constant fear to the point where you're kind of, what's agoraphobic?
Agoraphobic, yeah. You're just afraid to go outside.
Yeah.
You read something online about somebody, oh, I was bit by a spider. Now I don't have an arm anymore.
Yeah.
Suddenly, oh my God, there's spiders everywhere, and they're the really dangerous kind.
Yeah.
My secrets are being broadcast everywhere. My mom is this all-controlling entity. Her name is everywhere. All those MWs we see, they're everywhere. Yeah. The production card on the movie is my mom. It's like you are inside of this, and in my mind, this is what I'm thinking. The thing that we normally see in a film when you're dealing with somebody who's schizophrenic is
from the outside.
No, you see their perspective, and it warps reality like A Beautiful Mind.
Okay.
You believe that this stuff is happening and going around and whatnot, but then you also have the characters from the outside who reveal the truth to you. That no, this is reality. This guy such and such never happened. You imagined it or you hallucinated it. This film never shows you that.
That other point of view.
That other point of view. Every scene in this movie is from BEAU's perspective. Everything.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Mm-hmm.
Brilliantly played by Joaquin Phoenix.
Yes.
Can we talk about how good he is in this?
He's fantastic.
He is. I mean, he's always been such an interesting actor, but I didn't see Joker, which I know you saw, and apparently he won a Best Oscar acting award for. Good for him. But this film was really something to me. And again, it's funny because if we had done this review immediately after we'd seen that film, I think my thoughts about it would have been very, very different. But because I had time to gestate on this and just really think about it, it's hitting me in a different way.
I agree, yeah. I mean, my initial reaction was far more negative than it is today.
Yeah.
Today, after...
Maybe we should have done that with Men.
It's been months since we've seen Men, and I still hate it.
I didn't hate it. It was very different. It was very, very different.
It was just whatever.
Okay, getting back to this. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But yeah, my initial reaction was more negative. Mm-hmm. Basically, it was that joke. Oh, I guess this is what happens when you get Ari Aster to make a comedy. You get this. But having slept on it, having thought about it, the movie now makes a bit more sense, and it shows you an interesting premise. I mean, you never see a movie where you are inside the crazy man's perspective for the duration.
Right, the whole thing.
And there is no epilogue where it was just afterwards they were just oh wow, he really lost it, and you see the world is just normal, and you see the crazy homeless people that were running around are now just all standing around in business suits, or they were just people that he passed by in his daily life and he assigned these bizarre backstories to. You never see that. In this, you are in BEAU's mind the entire time. So nothing you really see could have actually happened. I mean, he may have just been in a coma since the moment he was hit by a car, or maybe the entire duration of the film. I have no idea, because this reality that we're in does not exist.
It's funny. Originally, after we watched it, you and I were sort of discussing it, and you said something that sort of triggered something in my brain, where you said that BEAU is an unreliable witness.
Unreliable narrator. Yeah.
Narrator. Tell me more about that. Why you thought that, and tell me why you thought that initially, and do you still think that next day after having slept on it?
Absolutely, because, well, one, the world that he was living in was just far too bizarre. It was one thing when he's leaving the therapist's office. You see it's kind of chaotic. There are some very strange things, but you're thinking, okay, well, I am kind of... They do build this as a comedy, so maybe there is some sort of comedic statement being made about gun culture in America or homeless issues in America. But then things start progressing where it just I think it probably snapped me out of it when I saw the dead guy in the street. The fact that there was a dead man
for several days,
not only in the street, but in the middle of it wasn't like he was hidden. No. Like he was hidden in a pile of garbage. There was guys sitting in garbage. They could have, there could have been a dead guy hidden in the garbage. You maybe see a little hand sticking out. This was a full-on corpse in the middle of the road, and nobody paid it any mind. People were walking over it.
We see BEAU kind of jump over it.
And I'm not even talking about just the crazy homeless people. I'm talking about there were normal people on the street too.
The
cop. Amy Ryan was there. Nathan Lane was there. They were in their truck. I don't know what they were doing. Were they handing out water or something?
Well, in the beginning, I don't know if you noticed, she has this food truck. I'm assuming she works for some kind of religious thing or organization where they hand out meals to disenfranchised people. It was her and this other gentleman. And then you see them again in the daylight, I guess the following day, when BEAU's running away from the policeman, and then that's when the accident happens.
Yeah, so you see that.
You see her very, very quickly in the beginning, the day prior.
And then what, the dead body was the beginning, But the thing that really cemented it for me was
The flashback.
not the flashback.
Okay.
When he goes to get the bottle of water, he props his door open because he doesn't have his key. And while he's trying to pay for the bottle of water, every single, like the entire street empties. It's not just like one or two guys trickle into his apartment building. It's every single homeless person goes into his building, gets in the elevator, and ends up in his apartment.
Yeah. And
that is just, you're in an unreal area now. So in my mind, that was what he was imagining. That was what, because he is severely paranoid.
Yes.
Clearly, he's schizophrenic if he's seeing like nobody reacting to dead bodies, weird tattooed men with tattooed eyeballs and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then like the guy on the ceiling.
Oh yeah, that was wild.
This world is not the real world. This is BEAU's world. Mm-hmm. So at that point, everything that we're seeing, in my mind, everything we're seeing can't be trusted. This is just his perspective of things. Because from then on, it just starts becoming even weirder and weirder. Like nothing makes logical sense. Like if you are struck by a car, or if you are involved in a stabbing by a serial killer that's running around the city that he saw on the news,
you'd be in a hospital.
You'd be in a hospital. You'd be being talked to by police. All of this stuff. You wouldn't end up in the middle of some strange suburb being cared for by a guy who does surgery. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I do surgery. I've patched you up. What? Yeah. That's not how society works. And, oh, yeah, there's our daughter. And, oh, hey, honey, she's just taking prescription bottles and just, like, eating them like Pez.
Candy. Yeah.
There's a deranged PTSD
guy,
war veteran living in a strange little sleeper attached to the house.
Yeah. Like a little Airstreamer.
Yeah, none of it made sense anymore. But to a person suffering from paranoid schizophrenia, this is just the world. This is the world that they're living. This is why, from our perspective, they can't function. And everything's against them. Everything is just piling on. Even like the passive aggressive guilt that a mother will dump upon their child is magnified 1,000-fold. To the point where the mother is this personification of just corporate greed, evil dominance. That's what the mother was. I mean, she was everywhere. Everything was controlled by the mother. Her initials were everywhere. It was even on his prescription bottle. Yeah. Like I said, even on the placard before the movie began. That was like a little joke. Yeah. But yeah. And in that crazy person's mind, that's how it is. I mean, it's funny. I'm thinking about it now. It's sort of like when you're a teenager and it's just like everybody's looking at me.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I got a little pimple on the side of my nose and everybody's making fun of me now. Yeah. Nobody gives a damn. Nobody cares. Yeah. And now imagine that magnified 1,000-fold combined with hallucinations that are so real that it's no longer just some stranger walked by without looking at me. Now they got a camera, or maybe their face is a camera or something like that. It looks so goddamn real.
So I have to tell you, initially when I watched this, I took everything at face value. I took that everything was happening as it was happening. And then afterwards, when you and I were talking in the kitchen, I think you had said that, like, that's just in his brain. And then that sort of opened up this other floodgate of thought in my brain about what was going on. So my interpretation, and again, this review is basically an opinion of two people here, right? This is not the gospel. This is not the filmmaker's intent. This is not the filmmaker's thought. If you want to deep dive on that, you're welcome to. If you want to watch this film, I'm going to say off the gate, I encourage it. This is not for everyone, though. This film is not for everyone.
And it's long.
So
this film feels long.
This film is a commitment. But having said that, I want to go back to my thoughts about this film. So once you mentioned that to me, that sort of opened up this other line of thought about what this movie represented. And I think that while I agree with you that a lot of this was going on in his brain to the point where it's exaggerated, like the streets are like this dystopian hellscape sort of equivalent to like a Mad Max movie, I think some of it was real. And I think that when people are broken, they're going to, well, depending on the person, right? They're going to find ways to try to survive in this world. I think in this case, BEAU needed to separate himself from his mother, from being under his mother's thumb, from being under his mother's rule. Growing up, it was just BEAU and his mother, and she dictated everything in his life. She exploited him in a way, right? She's this corporate titan. He's on posters hawking cough medicine or insurance or whatever it is, cereal, whatever her company was selling, right? So she has a stronghold on him, I feel like. And I think the other thing that I found, I'm going to kind of jump all over the place here. There's going to be spoilers now because I don't care, because I feel like this movie didn't do well, and I'm just going to talk about it because I think that if I wanted somebody to talk to me about this film and tell me why I should watch it, like, I'd want to know. So
from now on, spoilers are on the table.
So if you don't want spoilers, then turn this off immediately. But if you want to hear us ramble about it, stay with us. Towards the end, when you realize that BEAU's therapist, I guess, is on Mama's payroll, to me, that was kind of interesting and also significant because in spite of everything, there was no way that BEAU could ever completely break free from Mona's grasp. And I think that the other thing that I found interesting and sort of heartbreaking in a way is almost the way BEAU carried himself. I've heard you say this many times, almost about being apologetic for almost existing, where you constantly say, sorry, sorry, sorry. That was something that struck me when I was watching this, how very sorry BEAU was for things that weren't really even infractions. So from that perspective, and we all know people like this. We all know people like this, whether we're talking about ourselves or somebody that we know, either in school or at the office or a family member. We all know people that are like this. There's so many broken people, and everyone is just struggling to get to that next day, right? So in that respect, this film, this story felt like a revelation because, again, we don't talk about these things. We don't talk about broken people. We don't talk about the lives that they live, the stories that they're imparting, the experiences that they're having. We sort of just shun them aside. Like, go fix yourself. Go take a pill and go fix yourself, right? We're not a compassionate society, right? So I thought it was interesting that at the end, at BEAU's quote-unquote trial, these things are brought up, how he's not compassionate. He's compassionate to fish and to pets, but he's not compassionate to his fellow man. And meanwhile, I'm thinking, well, Mona's the one with all the money. Why isn't she doing these good deeds? Why isn't she opening up schools in impoverished areas? Why isn't she really making a case for mental health and the stigma of mental health? She definitely has the means to do it. She definitely has a reason to do it. Her son is suffering from this. And yet it's like, she's definitely the antagonist in my mind, right? She's definitely the villain here because it's almost like, well, I did all this for you and you couldn't even acknowledge me or whatever. And it's such a weird, like, I was watching that and it almost hurt to watch that whole sequence with the unbelievable PattiLuPone. She's fantastic. She's not in this movie very much, but that end sequence with her, right? Like, even before the trial was just really impressive and just, again, another nod to her just being a wonderful performer. But it was, as somebody who had very somewhat abusive parents, like, this resonated with me because it was like this whole thing. I mean, we definitely don't raise our children this way, but I feel like myself and in my generation, this whole idea of conditional love. I've done this for you, so you should do that for me. Mm-hmm. I'm your mother, so you owe me. And it's funny because, again, not to like time hop here, but one of my favorite films is Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? And in that, the Sidney Poitier character turns to his father and says, I don't owe you anything. You brought me into the world. You owe me. Just like when I have children, I'm going to owe them. But I don't owe you anything. So that's an interesting mindset, right? And I think the first time I saw that film, like, that was one of the things that I carried with me. And I feel like, again, in our generation, especially like my generation, I was born in the 70s, children were taught to be seen and not heard. Girls in particular we were taught to be decorative pieces, right? Even in the 80s, like the horror slasher films, like the cute cheerleader, topless scene and then, throat cut, right? So she's sort of dispensable. Like girls,
or the
women,
girl was basically just the trophy that two boys were fighting over.
Exactly. So now we've come at a point where in the year 2023, we've come to a point where things are more on the table, whether it's because of social media or whatever. That's great. And I think that some conversations are very hard to have, but we definitely need to have them. And I think that one of my takeaways from this film was the whole idea of mental health and how we really don't address it. We don't address it as a society. We don't address it as people. We don't even address it, I think, within our own communities or even families. I think it's something that people still shy away from and don't embrace and maybe don't call any attention or shine a light on. And that's unfortunate because so many people are suffering right now, right? People like BEAU, people who retreat to themselves, who are so fragile that they feel like in order to protect myself, I need to go away and put myself in this situation, which may or may not be more horrible than the previous situation, right?
Yeah, and honestly, the world is not making that any easier.
No.
Because even if you put yourself away, you try and get away from it all.
They're still there.
You pick up your phone, you look on the TV, and it's...
Killer spiders,
Killer spiders.
Homeless issues.
Homeless rampage.
The migrants are coming over, stealing jobs and
people
murdering
getting
people.
pushed on subway tracks. Migrant. I mean, remember when I would probably say right before Trump was elected, there was just endless stories about MI6 or I don't know what
which
the hell
is not
the
even a
Mexican
thing anymore.
gang. And now it's just that's not even a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Now
MI6 is a Mission Impossible movie.
Now it's just basically foreigners in general.
Yeah.
They're no longer a Mexican gang. It's just foreigners in general. They're just killing everybody. They'll be living in your backyard.
Yeah. Once you open your window, that's it. There's a whole embankment back there.
There's a tent city under every bridge.
I know.
Stores are burning.
I know this has nothing to do with anything, and I know that you hated it. But thank you for sitting there and plowing through Absolute Beginners with me yesterday. That was. But there's that scene towards the end, the whole make Britain white again sequence, which I thought was really interesting and sort of timely. I mean, this is a movie from the 80s, and yet we're still having these crazy conversations here, right?
It'll never go away.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always going to be people who don't like their lives and want somebody to blame for it.
Sure.
And the easiest person to blame is the person who doesn't look like you.
Sure.
So it's their fault.
Right.
They're taking my job. They're stealing my women. They're
setting up camps in my backyard.
And the government just wants to give them all the money in the world, and they don't give me anything.
Exactly. They're putting them up in 5-star hotels. And giving them free health care.
Yeah. I wish I was a destitute migrant. Yeah. I would be able to stay at the Four Seasons.
But I think this movie works on so many levels. It's kind of unfortunate. I think obviously the major thing that hurts this film is the runtime. And it's a big ask for any audience, but especially an audience in this day and age where the biggest form of entertainment is YouTube shorts and TikTok videos, which are less than a minute. So you really, really, really have to hook people. And in order to really appreciate this film and this story, you really have to stick with it. It is a commitment.
You have to stick with it and want to try and make sense of it.
Right.
Because that's the thing that's nice is that you can make sense of this movie.
Yeah.
If you really want to. It's not going to be apparent on the first time you see it.
Yeah.
Or immediately after you see it.
Yeah.
Maybe it is for some people.
Yeah.
It wasn't for me.
Yeah, same.
But
I appreciated
you
having
can.
the time after with you to talk about it.
You can figure it out. And I think that's sort of what I like about Aster is he will put a lot of stuff in his movies where you could analyze it and look at it and realize that, okay, this is happening because it applies here. This makes sense now. It didn't seem to make any sense in the beginning, but now it sort of makes sense.
And I think the other beauty of Ari Aster, not only as a filmmaker, but as a storyteller, is that, look, again, I agree with you. Not my favorite Ari Aster story, but I'm still going to give this a high grade because the more I think about it, the more it's making me think. And the beauty of an Ari Aster film / story is that you can go back to it again and again and find new things. I don't even know how many times I've seen Hereditary at this point, but if it's playing, my ass is on the seat watching it because it's like I always find something new. Yeah. It's funny. I think the first time you and I saw it together, I completely missed Toni Collette in that corner. And you were like, you didn't see that? How did you not see that? And I was like, I wasn't even looking for it because I was so focused on Alex Wolff's character that I was just like, what's happening? What's going on? Like, I'm just watching his face. So everything else is like secondary. But then the second time I see it, I'm like, oh shit, there it is. There she is in the corner like a little spider, right? So, and then again, like the different things, like focusing again, I think we've mentioned this in our previous review of Hereditary, like that end sequence just is like, once it starts, it's off to the races crazy. And it's like the naked people. Yeah. Like I didn't even notice that the first time. How did I not notice that? And it's funny because you can't slip that through my children's eyes. Like it was funny when we were watching BEAU in the bathtub, they were all of a sudden alive, like, ooh, Cooley. Old man Cooley, but Cooley
nonetheless.
Giant
nuts.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was hilarious. So this is kind of an interesting weaving of drama, comedy, and let's talk about horror because I think Ari excels in horror. I have to tell you, this happens very early in the film, but the notes that come under his door, that was making me crazy.
Really?
That was like I felt tense after like the fourth note. I'm like, what the hell is going on?
I like how that note flies across the floor into his bedroom.
Yes. And I'm like, now I'm, because we've seen Ari Aster movies and we know that things could go horribly wrong, horribly fast.
Yeah.
So I was like, where is this going? Right. And I found that sequence unsettling. I found it very, very unsettling. I found the fact that all these transient people all of a sudden encamp themselves in his home very unsettling.
Yeah.
I found the fact that the last woman that comes in that pulls the phone book out, I found that super unsettling. It's like, how did she know to do that? Mm-hmm. Right? It was almost like it was planned, right? There were so many things in this film that were very unsettling for me. Another
thing I noticed is when he's out on the scaffold looking in at the homeless people in his house, the homeless people are actually sort of like living. Yeah. They're cooking.
Yeah.
They are like not just like setting stuff on. I mean, at the end, it's a disaster.
Right, when he finally gets to come in.
But some of them are actually just like, all right, let's. TV. They're mixing. They're like pouring. They're making something with wine.
Yeah.
It's like they're not just rummaging through his fridge and tearing his clothes up. They're actually like living. So it's sort of like that's another thing that was like, okay, even in BEAU's crazy mind. These people are doing the things that he should be doing.
Right. But he's too afraid.
But he's just too afraid. He's afraid to do anything wrong. And it seems to be like it's something that comes up, making choices. He never wants to make a choice. Even when he's on the phone with his mom, telling her, I can't come. What do you think I should do? What do you think I should do?
Right. And then how her demeanor changes on that phone call.
Yeah.
Here she was, the loving mother, and all of a sudden it's like disappointment, right? And so let's go back to, a couple of things. What are your thoughts about Elaine? Young Elaine and then adult Elaine.
At the very, very end, I don't think Elaine was there at all.
Interesting. Why do you say that?
I think he saw during the news report that basically the picture of her. And then after that, the rest of that whole, honestly, I'm there's a certain point in the movie where I don't think much of anything's really like actually happening. Like I don't even know if
he had sex with her.
I don't think he had. No, I don't think he had sex with her.
I think he did.
I don't think he had sex with anybody. I don't think like that whole end bit after his mom shows up again. I don't know if any of that was real.
The trial thing?
The trial is not real at all.
Right. So I was going to say, I think that's all in his head. I think that's him judging himself.
That's absolutely
and punishing
him judging himself. I don't believe there was any sort of funeral with the headless corpse in the coffin. I don't think any of that happened.
Okay.
I think that was all in his mind. I don't think he ever... I don't know if he ever actually recovered or anything from getting hit by a car.
Again, what do you think of young Elaine and old Elaine?
I think that they look like the mom.
Interesting.
Yeah, she was basically a small surrogate for the mom. And
do you think that Mona had a certain expectation of Beau? There was a couple of times where it felt really kind of icky. Yeah,
the fact that they were sharing the bed on the cruise.
It was almost romantic.
Yeah, and she was like sort of like, it was weird. She had the discussion with him about sort of like being a man growing up or making decisions. And somehow that lesson never stuck in Beau's mind because he was incapable of making any sort of decision.
But, okay, I'm glad you brought that up. So... do you think that there was like, how do I say this? I guess I'm just going to come out and say it. Do you think there was some kind of nefarious undertone to that kind of conversation? Or was that something?
As far as
was she trying to be a parent and give a life lesson here?
I think in that moment she was, but I think overall she wanted an obedient servant, basically, an obedient son. Because the father left, he died. I don't know if that's true. I don't believe that actually is true at all. I don't know if you brought up something interesting with that song that's in the trailer.
Yeah.
The song is about one night stands.
Right.
I'm betting that Beau is just the product of a one night stand.
Completely plausible.
That is why the father is non-existent. That is why nobody knows anything about the father. Any sort of mentioning about the father is delusions of Beau and lies that the mother told him.
Right. He's not some big phallus that lives in the
He is
attic.
not a giant penis beast that lives in the attic. It's funny, that thing.
Does Beau have a twin? Do you believe Beau has a twin?
The twin was the boy who took the advice that the mother gave.
But then why give the advice if you're just going to punish the child for doing the thing that you asked them to do?
Because when you think you're doing the right thing, or the mother, in my mind, that was like her genuinely giving him advice that she probably adheres to in her life about being strong and making decisions, because that's how she became wealthy and successful.
Maybe. Or she could have inherited. We don't really know much about Mona.
Well, even if she inherited it, it seemed like she was like viewed as this sort of
titan of industry.
Yeah. But then there's you give that advice because that's your son. But then when you were confronted with the result of that, you realize that sort of like, be careful what you wish for. Now this kid's talking back to me. I have to put him in his place because I am also strong. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to let this stand. It's sort of like you're making a replacement almost, but you're not ready to go. Mm-hmm. Especially not from some little 12-year-old boy or however old that kid was. So what happens? You're in the attic. You're done. And if you and turning to prospective Beau, what about you? And what did she say? Are you like because he was naked,
taking a bath.
Bath. She says something that makes it sound like he had an erection or something.
Oh, really? I missed that.
She says something along the lines of...
Because I think I was still kind of like dazed at the idea of here she's punishing one child. But then again, it's like, I guess you're right, because if he did have a twin, there would have to be some kind of accountability. Like, I'm sure a school would have been like, well, where's Tommy? Right? Where's...
Yeah, there is no way that the twin actually existed.
But he was still in the attic, but now is an old version
wearing
of
the
both.
same exact clothes he was when he was sent up there.
No, he was wearing like a shirt and jeans in the.
No.
I think
I read about it. He was wearing the same exact outfit. That's why the shirt sleeves ended up like this.
That was so tiny. I thought he was wearing like shorts and like a casual shirt, because I could swear in the dream sequence or in the memory he's wearing like jeans and a button shirt.
I don't know about that. All I know is from what I read, and basically they were like, he's wearing the same exact outfit.
But I did notice that his clothes were small, so that sort of makes sense. So it would make sense that he's not a real...
And he's like holding like an empty cup. No water for him.
An empty cup because of his subversiveness, he's not rewarded.
Somebody, I read somewhere that they're basically saying that water symbolized...
New life? Or
no, like love.
Water symbolized love.
Yeah. Remember what she says? I squeezed everything out of me for you.
Mm-hmm.
And he's always, he's going in the bathtub. He goes in the bathtub later.
Mm-hmm.
Water seems to be water with his pills. Water is like...
But water's the ultimate punishment at the end.
Yeah, it gets turned on him when he's being born.
Right, in the beginning, right? It's just all sights and sounds.
It's like he's coming out of water.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of... I mean, that's another thing with it. There's a lot of symbolism in his movies.
Yes, and there's just so many layers. I think that's the other thing that I love about him as a storyteller, because I think, again, obviously not immediately, but at some point I would like to watch this again with fresh eyes and a different perspective, because I think if I had seen this film as a college student, as a film major, I don't know how I would have handled this film, to be honest. I think I would have hated it. And I don't think that I would have given it the benefit of time either. But as someone who's older, who is in a different mindset and is in a different place than I was 30, 40 years ago. Jesus. No, 30, right? Yeah, 30. I'm coming at this with a different sort of approach. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like eventually I'd like to watch this again. And again, I'm going to look at the frame differently. I'm going to look for other things, because I'll have remembered stuff.
There's probably stuff in there that we just...
Well, there's that scene where we're like, what is that? Remember when he's with the orphans of the forest and he's running away and he's...
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah, the penguin.
Yes. You actually stopped the film and we're like, what the fuck is that?
Why is there a penguin out there?
So this is what I mean. I think that, like, again, one of the beauties of Ari Aster as a storyteller, not even as a director, I think he's a fine director, but he excels in the story-making process. Not like a Jim Gunn, but different. And I think that his ability to multi-layer a story is currently without equal.
Mm-hmm. Maybe it's because it's a water bird.
Maybe.
Wasser means water.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, there's a lot to chew on here. I think from where it starts to where it ends, I actually really like this a lot. I like this a lot. I am going to give this a 7.5.
I'd probably give it a 7. I did, like I said, after my initial viewing of it.
If you had asked me last night, I would have been like, this is a 6.
Yeah, something like that, a 5 or a 6.
Yeah, it's a little bit more than average, but also what the hell am I watching? But I think today, you know what? I'm going to go as high up as 8. I think this is an 8. I think the performances are all magnificent. I think for the amount of screen time that PattiLuPone gets, she really is a scene stealer. Again, I've always liked Joaquin Phoenix, but he is a revelation in this to me. There is this quiet desperation in him. There is this agony that permeates from him. Mm-hmm. There is this lostness, this fear, and it's palpable. And it's amazing that somebody who's recorded something many months, maybe even years ago, can convey this to me as a viewer watching this right now. So I'm completely entranced by him. I really liked Nathan Lane in this. I really liked Amy Ryan in this. Everybody else is sort of like a peripheral character. I'm still scratching my head about Richard Kind because I'm like, that's not Bing Bong. He is not nice in this. And he's not in the film for very long.
Nice
he's in a conversation on the phone and then at the end. And he is not nice.
No. And there's like things in the conversation that he's saying that also leads me further into the belief that BEAU's version of the world is not accurate at all.
Yeah.
Especially the line, the little prince.
Yeah.
Which leads me to believe in reality, or the way that everybody else views the world, is that BEAU is the spoiled son of a very wealthy woman. Mm-hmm. He's been set up with an apartment. He has a credit card. Right. That the mother clearly controls.
He doesn't work.
He doesn't work. He has his therapy paid for. And he couldn't, you can't even show up.
And he says why he can't show up.
He says why he can't show up, and it's glossed over.
Yeah.
I was hit by a car, and the guy
Richard Kind did not care.
It's like the words never even registered.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot here to digest, again, about mental illness, sons and mothers, the relationship between sons and mothers, the responsibility of community towards individuals who are unable to maybe help themselves or are severely impacted mentally and are struggling and maybe need a hand of support.
You know what? I was thinking about what Olivia said yesterday. Maybe he was just in a mental hospital. Maybe the house in the suburbs was not a house. It was like a sanitarium. Yeah. Which would explain Jeeves and the daughter.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fact that he was being recorded.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible too. I mean, there's so many ways to interpret.
There's a lot of ways to interpret.
Yeah, and I think that elevates this because, again, this could be very run-of-the-mill, straightforward, but I think that when Ari Aster writes stuff, it's never really what's on the page. It's what's on the page and then some kind of thing.
There's something going on underneath.
Yeah, there's definitely like hidden stuff. Like even I got tense with the little napkin message.
Don't incriminate yourself.
Yeah, stop incriminating yourself. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Where is this going? Like, I was just like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
What is going on here?
Also, another word, keep yourself hydrated.
Yes. Yes. Also pertaining to water. Another thing that we didn't even touch on is the whole sequence in the Orphans of the Forest.
Yeah, I mean, there's that whole bit, and it's sort of like, what is going on?
Yeah, it almost feels like 4 separate vignettes, like mashed together, right? And in the Orphans of the Forest scene, there's that guy, and I'm like, is that the dad? Is that really his dad? Because he even says to him, "Dad," and then boom.
Boom, yeah.
And was the play representative of the life that BEAU wanted? I
think that was his imagination. Because honestly, when he snapped out of it, that they weren't even doing the play that he had lived.
Right. They were doing something else.
It was some other story that they were up on stage doing.
Right. And then just the idea of...
But it was like the same sort of plot. It was like about a guy who is living his life and sees a play and realizes there was a play about his life, but it was different than the one that BEAU had, where BEAU had 3 sons.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole bit with the pregnant lady, and she just hightails it out.
Yeah. As she should.
Yeah.
There's that. I mean, and just I really enjoyed the animated sequences in that section too. I thought that was really cleverly and beautifully done. Yeah, I think there's a lot to go through here. It's kind of funny. I don't think we could do it justice. Right? I think that this is a type of film that you have to watch.
See it yourself. Don't
go with any
don't make a hasty judgment about it. Think about it afterwards.
And don't go with any expectations.
And like I said, try and figure it out, because I believe that one of the things about Aster's things is he'll make something weird. He'll make something crazy, but there's a logic to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is definitely a logic there.
Yeah.
It's not just, oh, we're going to go crazy. It's going to be artistic.
Yeah. Yeah. He's not that kind
It's
of
not
guy.
it's not that. We've seen plenty of that crap.
Yeah. And it doesn't work sometimes.
It's clearly just somebody jerking off on camera.
Yeah.
There's a logic behind it.
Yeah. And there's a lot to, I think, it's almost like a puzzle, right? There's a lot to put together, and there's a lot of things that, I find him so interesting. Again, this film wouldn't work without a powerful script.
I think he could have shortened it. The 3 hours is long.
It is long.
But
it is long.
I think at this, I think he's at a point, I guess, in his career where the studio is just like,
here's money.
Here's a truckload of money. we're,
like J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, we're gonna
You're paying you by the word.
Yeah, exactly like J.K. Rowling. Like seriously, those books got bigger and bigger, and it was just like, what am I reading?
Yeah,
just get
where's
to the
editor?
Get to the point already.
Why isn't the editor doing his
or
her job?
They're still camping. What? So yeah.
This, unfortunately, I won't go into the numbers. I think I read briefly on the IMDb page that this is considered a flop. It's kind of unfortunate. It definitely is not. It's not going to be for everybody. This, if you're into Fast and Furious movies, this is not for you.
Well, I could totally see, because people, they're like, oh, the guy who made Midsommar and Hereditary, this is going to be a great horror movie.
Yeah.
You go in expecting that, you're going to be really disappointed, because it's not that. And if you're like, oh, he's making a comedy, I'm for a laugh.
Curious.
You're going for that, you're going to be disappointed. It's not
that kind of movie.
It's
either.
not the laugh out loud funny sort of film. It's really dark.
Yeah, very dark.
And like there are bits that you will laugh at,
but yeah. It's not like Step Brothers. You're not going to laugh like Step Brothers.
It's not Step Brothers.
It's not Step Brothers. It's not Tropic Thunder.
But yeah, I mean, it seriously, thriller, comedy, horror does wrap it up. I don't think it ever mixes those things.
No.
It's either one or the other.
Yeah.
Or the other.
Yeah. At all times.
At all times. Yeah. So you're sort of like kicked around as far as like,
what am I watching?
What am I watching? Yeah. So I could see why it didn't do well. And on top of that, it's 3 hours long. Yeah. I mean, 2 hours and 59 minutes. What were they trying to like $9.99 this thing? You know?
Maybe.
It's
maybe.
Yeah, it's 3 hours long. That's a long time to be watching something where you are confused most of the time.
Right. And there's no like neat resolution at the end here. This is one of those films that it's like, okay, well, that end sequence meant something. Now it's time for me to apply that into my own life experiences and try to figure that out.
And there's no end credit scene.
Yes.
You are watching just him drown.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is not going to be for everybody. This is definitely not going to be for everybody. I think, right, like you said, if you're expecting something like Midsommar or Hereditary,
no, this isn't that.
Do not have that expectation going into this one.
Don't go into it expecting that. This is, if you want to watch something that is sort of like looking at a puzzle.
If you like interesting, weird stories.
If you like that, if you like stories about mental health, maybe seeing, if my interpretation is correct, what Aster believes the world is like for somebody like that, it's interesting. Yeah. But yeah, this is not straight up horror. This is not a thrill ride.
And it's not a comedy.
It's not a comedy.
Yeah.
There are funny things happening, but it's sort of like when you view it as like just a schizophrenic nightmare, it's sort of like,
it makes sense.
It's funny, but it's also terrifying.
Yeah.
That this some people live this
every day. Yeah. There's no escape from that. All right, so what did you say? 7?
7.
I'm gonna give this an 8.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 7 and 8. I think it definitely warrants watching. Again, disclaimer: it is long. You have to really commit to this. You can't be on your phone. You have to pay attention to what's going on. And I think that if you do that, if you come to this film with an open mind and an open heart, I think that you'll definitely get a lot out of it. And even then, you might hate it. But I think just sit on it. I think that's the best advice I can give this about this movie. Just watch it, sit with it, and enjoy it, I guess, in a way. Just go for the ride. Go to wherever it takes you.
Yeah.
All right. So, again, BEAU is Afraid from 2023, clocking in at 2 hours and 59 minutes from director-writer Ari Aster. Again, pay your writers, God damn it. Pay your writers. Because we won't have stuff like this. Whether you like this or not.
You told me that A24 is the only studio that's doing right by the writers and actors, and that's why they're the ones that are still in production.
I guess so. Yeah, I read that A24 basically was like, yeah, whatever the writers want.
Yeah, they gave them all their demands.
Yeah, which is freaking kick ass. I can't believe I thought I had read somewhere before, but I'm assuming with the financial windfall of Everything Everywhere All at Once, because I originally read that they were trying to sell that studio. I don't think that they were making the money that they were making, but I think Everything Everywhere All at Once cost like a 12th of what that movie made.
Yeah, and it won like every single award.
Yeah. Every single, in every country. Good for them. I love the Daniels. But again, yeah, phenomenal storytelling by Ari Aster. I mean, this could have fallen super flat, but I think that there's a lot to ponder here. Again, mental illness, sons and mothers, communities, responsibility to the disenfranchised, to people with suffering from mental illness. Like, are we our brother's keeper? Like, what does that look like, right? And just having compassion for people that live this with this noise in their head all the time. I think those are stories that we don't see all the time. I don't think that's stories that make it to the screen all the time. I think the success of Aster's previous stuff definitely helped here. Unfortunately, this didn't do the box office that I guess a studio would have wanted. So his hands might be tied on his next project, but honestly, if you want to make films, you should watch this. If you love stories, you should watch this. Again, this is not an easy film. You have to, as an audience, participate here, which means no phones, open your eyes, and pay attention.
And think about it afterwards.
And think about it. Yeah, go with a friend, talk about it. If you hate it, you hated it. But
try and figure out what you hated about it and talk about what the hell happened. Like what any of this meant.
Or like how we say, what could have made that better? If you
I'm not gonna play the what could be better on this one.
No, I wouldn't either.
It's really just it's just talk about it afterwards and try and figure out what you saw, because like I said, the thing that's nice about Aster's stuff is there is some kind of logic behind it. In Hereditary and Midsommar and in this. Yeah. It's not just weirdness for weirdness' sake.
Yeah.
And we've seen plenty of directors do that. Right. And storytellers do that, where it's just, hey, let's throw a dog in there that talks or something weird.
Yeah. And
it's not that.
And I think the other beauty of him as a filmmaker and a storyteller is the layers, because you see something, but it could kind of mean something else, right? And I think there's layers here. There's definite layers here to be like looked at and explored, and that's the sign of a good storyteller. And again, you can't have a good movie without good writing. This is good, strong writing. This is very interesting writing. This is not a story that you see all the time. Granted, it is long. There are parts that drag. There were parts where I was like, what am I watching? But overall, the experience, I don't regret watching this film at all. I love it now. I don't love it like I love The Raid 2, but it definitely is sitting on it, right? I think that was a smart call on our part, just to sit on it and
I don't think we could have properly
day.
Talked about it
last night. No, because it was long and we were exhausted and we were like, what? Yeah. Although then we spent like a half an hour on the island just chatting about it. So go figure. But anyway, I like talking with you about movies. I like watching movies with you.
Me too. Okay.
That's me making a kissy face at you. Anyway, so again, Ari Aster, Beau is Afraid. Go check it out. And that's it from us, and we will bid you all a
good night.
Good night.